The impact of hitting the water knocked the breath from my lungs. For a moment, everything went black as the cold enveloped me, dragging me down into darkness. Above, through the rippling surface, I could see the silhouette of our son Marcus, standing at the cliff's edge, his figure stark against the setting sun. He didn't even wait to see if we would resurface. He simply turned and walked away. I fought against the current pulling me deeper, my lungs burning for air. The salt water stung my eyes, but I forced them open, desperately searching for Raymond. The fall had separated us. Just as panic began to overtake me, I felt his hand grasp mine underwater. His face appeared before me, blood streaming from a gash on his forehead, his eyes wide with shock and something else, determination. He pulled me close, his lips against my ear as we both kicked toward the surface. "Don't gasp when we break through," he whispered hoarsely as we approached the air. "He might still be watching. The only chance is to pretend we're dead." We surfaced as quietly as possible, taking only the smallest breaths, keeping our bodies low in the water. Raymond pointed to a small outcropping of rocks that would hide us from the cliff view. We moved silently, every muscle screaming, the cold water numbing my fingers as I clung to my husband of 30 years, the man who had stood beside me through everything life had thrown at us. Everything except this: betrayal by our only child. 3 weeks earlier, I had been in my garden, the place where I always found peace. The roses I'd nurtured for years were in full bloom, their sweet scent filling the air as I carefully pruned the dead heads. My hands, though wrinkled now at 62, still moved with precision among the thorns. I rarely pricked myself anymore. Decades of working with my hands, first as a nurse, then tending my garden in retirement, had given me a careful touch. The sound of tires on our gravel driveway pulled me from my reverie. I smiled, expecting Raymond home from his golf game. Instead, Marcus's sleek black SUV came into view. My heart skipped with joy. Our son rarely visited without calling first. I pulled off my gardening gloves, smoothed my grey-streaked curls, and hurried to greet him. But something was wrong. I could see it in the rigid way he held himself as he stepped from the car, in the tight line of his mouth that wouldn't quite form a smile. His eyes, so much like his father's, wouldn't meet mine. "Marcus, what's wrong, baby?" I asked, reaching for him. He flinched away from my touch. "We need to talk, Mom," he said, his voice flat. "Is Dad home?" The chill that ran through me then. I should have listened to it. Instead, I invited him inside, made his favorite tea the way I had since he was a boy, and waited for whatever storm was brewing. What I didn't know then was that storm would nearly destroy us all. Raymond returned 30 minutes later, his face lighting up at the sight of our son sitting at our kitchen table. "Marcus, what a surprise!" he boomed, clapping him on the shoulder. Marcus barely nodded in response. I watched as my husband's smile faltered, uncertainty replacing his initial joy. He glanced at me, a silent question in his eyes. I could only offer a small shrug in response. "Mom says you want to talk," Raymond said, taking a seat across from our son. "Everything okay at work? How's Vanessa?" At the mention of his wife's name, something dark flashed across Marcus's face. "Vanessa's fine," he said shortly. "This isn't about her, it's about the trust fund. Grandmother's trust fund. The trust fund. My mother's legacy to Marcus. Money she'd accumulated over decades of shrewd investments and careful saving. Money that had been earmarked for Marcus's future children's education. My mother had grown up poor in rural Georgia, had worked her way through nursing school scrubbing floors at night, had saved every penny she could. Education is freedom, she always said. She'd made me promise the money would be saved for her great-grandchildren's college funds. Raymond shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "What about it? I need access to it now." Marcus's words fell like stones between us. The full amount. I felt my throat tighten. "Marcus, you know that money is for your children's education. Your grandmother was very specific." "I don't have children," he cut me off coldly. "And at this point, Vanessa and I probably won't. We've decided we want different things." Raymond leaned forward. "Son, what's going on? Are you in some kind of trouble?" Marcus laughed, a harsh sound I'd never heard from him before. "Trouble? No, Dad. I've got an opportunity. A business opportunity that could set me up for life. But I need capital. Significant capital. We could help you with a loan," I offered quickly. "Your father and I have some savings." "Your some savings isn't enough," he snapped. "I need the trust. All of it." The way he said it, dismissive, entitled, made me flinch. This wasn't the son we'd raised. The boy who'd cried when he found an injured bird in our backyard. The teenager who'd worked summers at the community center, teaching underprivileged kids to swim. The young man who'd held my hand at my mother's funeral and promised her he'd make her proud. Raymond's jaw tightened. Marcus, that trust isn't just money. It's your grandmother's legacy. She worked her whole life. She's dead, Marcus interrupted flatly. And I'm here. I need that money now, not some hypothetical children in the future. The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear the wall clock ticking, the hum of the refrigerator, my own heart pounding in my chest. No, I said finally, my voice steadier than I felt. I promised my mother that money stays in trust for education. What happened next still haunts me. My son, my beautiful boy whom I'd carried beneath my heart for 9 months, whom I'd nursed through fevers and heartbreaks, whom I'd loved with every fiber of my being, looked at me with cold, calculating eyes I didn't recognize. I thought you might say that, he said, standing abruptly. Think about it. Both of you, I'll be in touch. After he left, Raymond and I sat in stunned silence. He'll come around, Raymond said finally, reaching for my hand across the table. He's just going through something. We'll talk to him again in a few days. But Marcus didn't come around. Instead, strange things began to happen. First, it was the hang-up calls in the middle of the night. Then the mail, important documents, bills that never seemed to arrive. Our neighbors began treating us differently, some avoiding eye contact, others watching us with poorly disguised curiosity. One evening, our longtime friend and neighbor Ellen came to the door, her face troubled. "Diane," she said hesitantly, "I need to show you something." She handed me her phone, open to a local community Facebook page. There, in black and white, was a post supposedly written by Raymond, filled with racist, hateful language about our diverse neighborhood. I felt the blood drain from my face. "Ellen, Raymond would never," I began. She held up a hand. "I know. That's why I came to you directly. Someone's setting you up, and I think you need to know." More incidents followed. Raymond's car was vandalized in the grocery store parking lot. Someone called his former workplace, he'd been retired for 3 years, claiming he'd been stealing company equipment for years. Our home insurance company called about a claim we'd never filed, saying someone reported extensive water damage we were trying to fraudulently collect on. Through it all, we couldn't reach Marcus. His phone went straight to voicemail. When we drove to his house, no one answered, though both his and Vanessa's cars were in the driveway. "Something's very wrong," I told Raymond one night as we lay awake, both too anxious to sleep. "This isn't about the trust fund anymore. It feels calculated." Raymond was silent for a long moment. "Tomorrow I'm going to the bank to check our accounts, and then I'm calling Jason." Jason was his cousin, a private investigator in Chicago, but we never made it to the bank the next day. As we backed out of our driveway, a police cruiser pulled up behind us, lights flashing. 2 officers approached, their faces grim. "Raymond and Diane Wilson?" one asked. Raymond nodded, his hand finding mine across the console. "We need you to come with us to the station. There are some serious allegations we need to discuss." The next hours were a nightmare. Separate interrogation rooms, questions about financial improprieties, about large sums of money being moved from accounts in our names, about offshore accounts we'd never heard of, about apparent plans to flee the country. "We've never done any of this," I cried, after hours of the same circular questions. "Someone is setting us up." The detective across from me sighed, pushing a folder across the table. "Mrs. Wilson, we have documentation, signatures, phone records. Either you're lying to me now, or you've been living a double life for years." When they finally allowed Raymond and me to see each other, he looked decades older, his face grey with exhaustion and fear. "It's Marcus," he whispered, when the officers stepped away briefly. "It has to be. But why? Why would he do this to us?" They released us that evening, but the damage was done. Our neighbors had seen the police cars. The local news had picked up the story. Respected retired couple under investigation for fraud. Our phones rang constantly with calls from concerned friends, former colleagues, our church members. Through it all, Marcus remained unreachable, until the text came, 3 days later. "Meet me at Lookout Point, 7 p.m. Come alone. I can fix everything. M." Lookout Point was a scenic area about an hour's drive from our home, known for its stunning cliff views over the ocean. Raymond and I had taken Marcus there countless times when he was growing up. "It's a trap," Raymond said immediately when I showed him the text. "We're not going." "But what if he wants to make things right?" I pleaded. "What if he's realized what he's done?" Raymond shook his head. "Diane, our son is behind all of this. The trust fund, the false accusations, the police. He's systematically trying to destroy us. We need to go to the authorities with what we know." "And tell them what?" "That our son is framing us." "With what proof?" I countered. "No, I need to hear it from him. I need to understand why." In the end, we compromised. We would go together, not alone as the text demanded. We would meet Marcus, try to understand what was happening, try to reach the son we'd raised and loved. It was a clear evening when we arrived at Lookout Point. The parking area was empty, except for a black SUV I recognized as Marcus's. The sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the ground. We found him standing near the edge of the cliff, looking out over the water. The wind ruffled his hair, the same hair I used to cut when he was a little boy sitting on a stool in our kitchen, squirming and complaining. "Marcus," I called softly. He turned, and for a moment, just a moment, I saw my little boy in his eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by that cold, calculating look I'd seen at our kitchen table. "I told you to come alone," he said, his voice carrying on the wind. "We're your parents," Raymond replied steadily. "We do things together, always have." Marcus laughed, that same harsh sound that didn't belong to him. "How touching. The united front." "Why, Marcus?" I asked, taking a step toward him. "Why are you doing this to us? What happened to you?" He stared at me for a long moment. "Do you know what it's like to always be the good son? The responsible one? The one who does everything right? College, career, marriage? The perfect path you laid out for me?" "We never forced you," Raymond began. "You didn't have to," Marcus shouted, his composure cracking. "It was always there, the expectation. Be worthy of the sacrifices. Be worthy of the struggles. Honor your grandmother's legacy. Do you know how suffocating that is?" "So this is about the trust fund?" I asked, confused. "All of this? The false accusations, turning our neighbors against us, the police, because we wouldn't give you the money?" Marcus's face contorted. "It's about freedom. My freedom. That money is my ticket out of the life you pushed me into. A life I never wanted." "What about Vanessa?" Raymond asked. "Does she know what you're doing?" Something flashed across Marcus's face. Pain, regret. "Vanessa left me 6 months ago. She said she didn't recognize me anymore." He laughed bitterly. She was right. I took another step toward him, my hand outstretched. "Marcus, baby, let us help you. Whatever's happened, whatever you've done, we can fix it together." He looked at my hand, and for a heartbeat, I thought he might take it. Then his expression hardened again. "It's too late for that," he said quietly. "Way too late." What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Marcus lunged forward, shoving Raymond hard in the chest. Raymond stumbled backward toward the cliff edge. I screamed, rushing to grab my husband. I caught his arm, but Marcus was there, pushing us both now, his face a mask of determination and something else, desperation. "I'm sorry," he whispered as we teetered on the edge. "I have no choice." Then we were falling, the wind rushing past, the ocean coming up to meet us with terrifying speed. The impact, the cold, the darkness, and then Raymond's hand finding mine underwater, his voice in my ear. "The only chance is to pretend we're dead." Now as we huddled among the rocks at the base of the cliff, the tide beginning to rise around us, Raymond outlined our grim situation. "He's going to report us missing," he whispered, his lips blue with cold. "He'll say we were distraught over the fraud investigation, that we hinted at suicide. He's probably already set it up. Emails, notes we never wrote. With us, presumed dead, he gets everything," I realized. "The house, our savings, and the trust fund with no restrictions. And he gets away with it all," Raymond added grimly. Night was falling. We were injured, freezing, miles from anywhere, with no phone, no way to call for help, and our son, our own flesh and blood, believed he had killed us. "We need to move," Raymond said, wincing as he shifted his weight. I could see now that his leg was injured, possibly broken in the fall. "The tide's coming in. These rocks will be underwater in a couple of hours." "You can't walk," I protested. "And we don't even know where to go." Raymond's eyes met mine, the same steady gaze that had anchored me through 40 years together. "Then I'll crawl if I have to. We didn't survive that fall just to drown, Diane." I helped him stand, taking as much of his weight as I could. Together we began to make our way along the narrow, rocky shoreline, away from where Marcus would expect our bodies to wash up, if he expected them at all. The journey that night was the hardest physical challenge of my life. The terrain was treacherous. Slippery rocks, patches of sucking sand, fallen trees from landslides past. Raymond's leg clearly caused him agony with every step, though he bit back his cries, afraid even now that Marcus might somehow hear us. We moved in near darkness, the moon occasionally breaking through the clouds to light our way. Every sound made us freeze. Was it searchers? Was it Marcus coming to make sure we were truly gone? "Why didn't we see it?" I whispered, as we paused to rest, huddled together for warmth in the lee of a large boulder. How did we miss what was happening to him? Raymond was silent for a long moment. "Maybe we saw what we wanted to see," he finally said. "The son we raised, not the man he became." By dawn, we had managed perhaps 2 miles along the coast. Exhaustion and cold had set in deeply. Raymond's leg was swollen to twice its normal size, and my own body felt battered beyond recognition. But ahead, through the morning mist, I could make out what looked like a small cabin set back from the shore. "Look," I croaked, my voice raw from the salt water I'd swallowed. "Shelter." Raymond squinted through the grey light. "It could be abandoned, or it could be someone who will help us. Or it could be someone who will report finding us to the authorities," I added. "And word would get back to Marcus that we survived." We looked at each other, the same thought passing between us. If Marcus knew we were alive, he would try again, and next time, he might not fail. "We need a plan," Raymond said, grimacing as he shifted position. "A way to gather evidence against him before we resurface." As the sun rose higher, burning away the mist, we made our decision. We would approach the cabin, seek help, but not reveal our true identities. We would say we were hikers who got lost, fell, needed medical attention, and then, once we were stronger, we would find a way to expose what our son had done. The cabin, as it turned out, belonged to an elderly man named George, who spent most of the year living alone on this remote stretch of coastline. He was suspicious at first, 2 injured, bedraggled strangers appearing at his door at dawn, but the condition we were in spoke for itself. "Got a satellite phone," he told us gruffly after helping us inside. "Can call for medical help if you need it." "No," Raymond and I said in unison, too quickly. George's bushy eyebrows rose, but he didn't press. "Suit yourselves. Got a first aid kit and some know-how. Used to be a medic in Nam." Over the next days, as George tended our injuries with surprising gentleness, we concocted a story. We were Karen and James, married 40 years, taking a hiking trip to celebrate our anniversary. We'd strayed from the trail, fallen. We had no ID because our backpack was lost in the fall. If George doubted our story, he didn't say so. He simply nodded, changed Raymond's bandages, brought us soup made from fish he caught himself, and gave us space to recover. A week passed. Raymond's leg began to heal, though he still couldn't put weight on it. The bruises on my body faded from angry purple to sickly yellow, and all the while we planned. "We need proof," Raymond said one night as we lay on George's spare cot. "Proof that Marcus tried to kill us. Proof that he framed us for the fraud." "How do we get that when everyone thinks we're dead?" I whispered back. "The moment we show our faces, he'll know. He'll destroy any evidence, or worse, try again." Raymond was silent for a long moment. "We need help. Someone Marcus wouldn't suspect. Someone he doesn't know is connected to us." I thought about our circle of friends, our family connections. Most were too obvious. Marcus would be watching them, expecting them to grieve, perhaps even playing the role of the dutiful, devastated son. Then it hit me. "Vanessa," I said suddenly, "his ex-wife. He said they separated 6 months ago. She saw the change in him, saw who he was becoming." Raymond nodded slowly. "If we could reach her, convince her to help us. She might have evidence of her own," I added. Things she noticed, conversations they had. The plan began to take shape. George, though clearly puzzled by our secretive behavior, agreed to help us get a message to Vanessa. He would drive to the nearest town, find a way to contact her without leaving a trace back to us. 2 more weeks passed. Raymond's leg improved enough for him to move around with a makeshift crutch George fashioned for him. I regained my strength, helping George with tasks around the cabin to repay his kindness. And we waited for word from Vanessa. Then, one evening as the sun was setting, George's satellite phone rang, a rare occurrence in his isolated existence. He answered, listened for a moment, then handed it to me with a nod. "Karen?" a woman's voice said hesitantly, using the false name we'd given George. Yes, I replied, my heart pounding. This is the friend you were trying to reach. George explained some of what happened. Is it true? Did he really? Yes, I said simply. He did. There was a long silence on the other end. Then, I've been gathering information for months, since before I left. I knew something was wrong, but I never imagined this. Hope surged through me. What kind of information? Financial records, emails, recordings of phone calls. I was planning to use it for divorce proceedings, but then he agreed to everything I asked for in the settlement, and I just wanted out. Her voice hardened. But attempted murder, that changes everything. We arranged a meeting, somewhere safe, somewhere Marcus wouldn't think to look. Vanessa had not attended our funeral, she told us. She couldn't bear to see him play the grieving son when she suspected he was somehow involved in our disappearance. The day we met Vanessa face to face was the day I truly understood the depth of Marcus's betrayal. She brought with her a laptop containing months of evidence of his careful, methodical plan to destroy us, to take everything we had, to erase us from existence. It started small, she explained, her fingers trembling slightly as she showed us emails Marcus had drafted, posing as Raymond, to set up offshore accounts, just moving small amounts of money, testing the waters. Then it escalated. The evidence was overwhelming. Marcus had spent months building his plan. He had studied Raymond's signature until he could forge it perfectly. He had researched methods to turn our community against us. He had even consulted with a criminal lawyer, posing as a fiction writer, researching a novel about how to make a murder look like suicide. "Why didn't you go to the police?" Raymond asked her quietly. Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. "Because I loved him once. Because I kept hoping he would stop, come to his senses." She wiped her eyes. "And because I was afraid. The man he's become, Ima, he's dangerous." Together, the three of us developed a strategy. Vanessa would continue to gather evidence, working with a trusted detective she knew from her job as a legal assistant. Raymond and I would remain dead until the case was airtight, until Marcus had no chance of escape. The next 3 months were the strangest of my life. Living in a small rental cabin miles from our home, using false names, watching from afar as our son inherited our estate, liquidated our assets, and prepared to access the trust fund that had started it all. We watched news reports about our presumed deaths. We saw Marcus interviewed, tears in his eyes as he spoke about his devastating loss. We read obituaries we hadn't written, saw flowers placed on empty graves. And through it all, the evidence against Marcus grew. Bank records, witness statements from people he'd hired to help frame us, the testimony of a boatman who had dropped him at a private dock near Lookout Point the evening we died, a detail he'd never mentioned to the police. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Vanessa called with the news we'd been waiting for. "It's time," she said simply. "They're ready to make an arrest." The day Marcus was taken into custody was not a victory. How could it be? He was our son, our only child. Watching the news footage of him being led away in handcuffs, his face a mask of shock and disbelief, I felt no joy, only a deep, abiding sorrow for what could have been, for the life he'd thrown away, for the son we had lost long before he tried to kill us. Our resurrection caused a media sensation, of course. The story was too sensational to ignore. Parents presumed dead, returning to accuse their son of attempted murder. The evidence was irrefutable, bolstered by our testimony and Vanessa's meticulous documentation. Marcus refused to see us after his arrest. His only message, delivered through his court-appointed attorney, was brief: "You should have stayed dead." The trial was a blur of painful testimony, damning evidence and public scrutiny. I sat in the courtroom each day, my back straight, my eyes forward, refusing to break even as my heart shattered again and again. Raymond held my hand through it all, his strength the only thing keeping me from collapsing under the weight of our shared grief. When the verdict came, guilty on all counts, there was no celebration, only the hollow acknowledgement that justice, however necessary, could not heal the wound left by betrayal so profound. In the aftermath, we rebuilt our lives piece by piece. We sold the house with its memories both beautiful and painful. We established a foundation in my mother's name to provide educational opportunities for disadvantaged youth, fulfilling her legacy in a way the trust fund never could have. And we learned to live with the questions that would never have answers. How had we failed so completely as parents? Had the seeds of Marcus's betrayal always been there, or had something broken in him along the way? Could we have prevented it if we'd seen the signs earlier? 1 year after the trial, Raymond and I returned to Lookout Point. The place of our near death had become, strangely, a symbol of our survival. We stood together at the cliff edge, looking out over the water that had both nearly claimed our lives and given us a second chance. "Do you ever wonder if we could have done something differently?" I asked, the question that had haunted me every day since that terrible night. Raymond took my hand, his fingers interlacing with mine as they had for over 4 decades of marriage. "Every day," he admitted. "But I've come to believe that some choices aren't ours to make. Marcus chose his path. We can't carry that burden for him." As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, I felt something inside me shift, not healing exactly, but acceptance, a recognition that life continues even after betrayal, that love persists even through unimaginable pain. "We survived," I said softly, looking not at the deadly water below, but at the horizon ahead. "Yes," Raymond agreed, his arm slipping around my waist. "And that's what he never understood about us. We always find a way through, together." We turned away from the cliff then, walking back toward our car, toward whatever remained of our lives. Behind us, the sun slipped below the horizon, taking the light with it, but promising, as it always does, to return again tomorrow. That day at Lookout Point, I finally understood the truth that would sustain me through all the days to come. He took our trust, our security, our belief in the goodness of what we'd created, but he could never take our dignity or our capacity to begin again. In the end, that was the one thing our son never learned. True strength isn't in destruction, but in the courage to rebuild from the ashes of betrayal. And in that, he underestimated us completely.